Hello, lovely people. I haven't kind of done one of these reflections from the Cursush garden for a while, but it's a week now. This time last week, I had packed my car to the gills and made my way up to the sacred hill of Uisneach in the very heart of Ireland for the Uisneach Fire Festival. So I'm just about kind of landed and back to alleged normal, or as normal as it ever gets around here, after being wrecked and my muscles not working from all the up and down into the tents. I brought 4 tents with me for our little group and sort of created a welcome space. So by creating a circle of chairs in our little campsite space, there's an opening. There's an opening for people to come and to sit. And the festival was amazing. It's always wonderful to be part of that procession. I had the opportunity to do solo storytelling performance, which took me a little out of my comfort zone because I normally do mythological storytelling and I'm very much kind of in my element doing that because working with the myths all the time with my students in Cursush and sort of being absolutely obsessed with them since I was a kid, they're internalized and it's really easy to tell those stories. But I had that creeping kind of, no, this is what I need to do for kind of a couple of weeks in advance. And it was only really when I was up there on the Friday that I kind of finalized that decision that I was going to tell a personal story and an ancestral story, weaving in mythological themes with my time spent in a mother and baby home in Bessborough when I was 18, and an ancestral curse on my mother's family, which I came to understand was kind of part of my story and how that curse was broken. That was a really kind of empowering thing for me to do and really kind of resonated with the sovereignty concept that I work with a lot and that I teach a lot, and that is a central part of our work here at Cursush. And my dear friend Danu Forrest from Glastonbury was camped with me, and she has a family story which resonates with all of that, and she was saying, yeah, do it. And then the lovely Tommy from Tara, who I call Pagan Santa because he always comes around with sacks of gifts for everyone, he presented me with this beautiful talking stick inscribed with runes, and it was all about speaking your truth. And that was another confirmation on the Saturday night. So I went for it, and the feedback was really, really powerful. It meant a lot to me. And then on the Sunday morning with the Cursush women, we did a group kind of mythological storytelling enactment where 3 of the women embodied the spirit of Danu, Shannon and Boann and told the story of those 3 rivers. And then we had the sovereignty goddesses, and we really bring through energy for that. As I said to the audience at the time, none of that is scripted. I create a container, yes, so there's a guideline or an outline of how it's going to flow, and then the women are given their roles. But they find from within themselves, from their training, from their understanding of the myths, from their practice, the words to tell the story of those goddesses and to offer the blessings. And at the time of Bealtaine, one of the things we associate with Bealtaine is that, the Banishri, the sacred marriage, the sacred union, which is obviously kind of framed in quite binary terms. But for me, and one of the things I teach is that the primary sacred union is within the self. So bringing that sort of sacred feminine, sacred masculine that is within each of us together in sacred union creates a wholeness. And this work is so much about sovereignty, about aligning with the sovereignty of the land, that divine power that's in the land, and sort of radiating that out. When we bring that sacred union in the self together, we come into a wholeness. And we can't do this work if we don't. We really cannot mediate sacred energy if we are not in wholeness and in alignment in ourselves. But the other thing in today's world, where we're aware of that broad spectrum of sexuality, that broad spectrum of gender orientation, it becomes less important whether it's about man, woman, because it is out of that wholeness of internal sacred union that we relate then to the wholeness in the other person. And I think that's important for a lot of people to hear, that this is an inclusive practice. And sovereignty is not what some people think it is. We think back to what sovereignty is in our traditions, that sovereignty of the land, which is embodied by the goddesses of sovereignty, and we have many of them. And then that sovereignty being bestowed upon the worthy candidate. So again, looking at this world, the whole patriarchal systems of the world causing like so much pain, so much destruction, war, torture, slaughter, genocide, violence against women. I mean, violence across the board. Nobody ever says there's no violence against men, but generally speaking, most of it is perpetrated by men against men, not exclusively, but a lot. So if we don't start really bringing that energy of the sacred in the land, that Mother Earth energy, and looking at how that sovereignty or empowerment, authenticity, really coming into the core of ourselves, derives from the land and our connection to it, then we miss the point of the worthy candidate. And so I think it is really important, whether men or women, that we bestow our energy, our love, our intimate connection, our time upon the worthy candidate. Because if not, we disempower ourselves, and we've all been there. God knows I have, and it is a real job of work to heal from that, from being undermined or disempowered, And obviously those things happen because we allow them, and conditioning comes into that, society's expectations comes into that, doubting ourselves, even the wanting to be a good person, wanting to come from the heart, the belief that, if your heart is open enough, if you hold space enough, that things will heal and things will be. But we need to not just be about that love and opening of the heart. We also need healthy boundaries. And that's really, really important. It's really important in this sacred work to bestow our beings, our loving energy, our heart upon an unworthy candidate is to diminish and disempower our own sovereignty. And in doing that, we disrespect the goddess, the sovereignty of the land. So it's a really important thing to find that wholeness in ourselves, and from that position of strength and empowerment to then connect with the other. The primary union is in the self. So, having come back from Uisneach and sharing up all the beautiful photos and putting up posts and all the rest, I'm seeing, kind of people querying, oh, it should be free and it should be. First of all, there probably is an ethical, moral, spiritual, political discussion to be had about private ownership of sacred sites. That is a whole other ball game, and it's a whole other day's work. However, you're not comparing like with like if you're talking about events, say for instance, as one friend was at, Stonehenge or Glastonbury or whatever. This is a festival event, and it makes no pretense to be otherwise. It is based on the concept of what might our ancestors have done at this time of the year. the big sacred fire, and it is a sacred fire, but it's not a pagan event. It's not like a pagan ceremony. So those of us who are pagan, and there are many, many of us who are pagan who go to Uisneach because it's such a special place, and because gathering together, like that gathering of tribes at that time, just feels really beautiful and really powerful and very moving. But the procession is pageant, and personally, I don't think it's ever been said that it was intended to be anything otherwise. Now, for instance, those of us in Currasush, because we are a pagan sisterhood, and we had a couple of brothers like sort of with us, we gather in circle before the procession. We hold a ceremony. We invoke Eru up out of the land, standing there on the sacred hill of Uisneach. We invoke Eru into ourselves and Orlu, and we carry those energies with us into the procession. So that energy is very real, and that energy is very spiritual, and it is something we carry through as we chant, as we drum, moving up the hill towards that fire, in attendance at the lighting of the fire, which was done this year by Eddie Lenihan, which was wonderful. And then holding that space with others there around the fire. So I'm at peace with it. Now, the one thing I would say, there was probably a bit of admin heavy energy this year, and again, that's another layer that can be addressed or discussed and maybe ironed out, because Uisneach is not a festival in the same way that other festivals are. Uisneach is, and always has been, more of a gathering. And so it was absolutely wonderful to be there. It was wonderful to be in a little encampment with the sisters. Very importantly for me, we had a lot of our northern sisters down, and that is really, really essential, because this is a 32 county island. This is one island. Our traditions, before a kind of arbitrarily drawn, politically motivated line on a map ever came about, all you have to do is go to Anmacca, go to Newgrange, go to places all over the island and see these people were the same. They were working with the same kind of sites. They were obviously worshipping in the same kind of way, and their culture was shared. And that's something we still have, those of us who honour the land and who work in this way. And we're trying really hard to draw from our Indigenous practices, but we don't have an unbroken line. So, of necessity, a lot of it is reconstructed. And I think, along with the ceremonies that the Druids or the priests and priestesses of old would have held, there would have been a massive hoolie, There would have been the music and the celebrating and the dancing and the feasting. And so we're still doing that. So Bealtaine as a season continues. My hawthorns are out in full bloom here in the garden. And, last weekend it was all about being out on the land and sitting outside around a little fire. And this weekend I will be online Saturday night and Sunday night with overseas students. And that's important too, because it is a way of connecting in those people who don't live on this land but who are really connected into the traditions, either through ancestry or just by being really drawn to it. And then the following weekend there's an event my dear friend Alwyn is holding in Dublin, and I will go to that. So it really is this Bealtaine, this month of Bealtaine, which is the month of May, continues like it's a season. And so, along with that sacred union concept, we have that concept of the abundance, the blossoming. It is the time of the blossoming. So, what do we want to blossom in our lives? And remembering that when the blossoms fade, from them come the fruits, the nuts, so we have our sloes and our rose hips and our haws, and then like our hazels, our rowan berries. So what comes in our lives at the blossoming time will also be the fruits that show up, in September. It will be the harvest that we gather in. And so everything that has led us to this blossoming time is also what's leading us to what we will reap at harvest time. So setting our intentions for the blossoming ahead of Bealtaine is really important. It's really significant at each turn of the wheel, as we go through each of those quarters and cross quarters. It's focusing on what we set out as our intentions now is what will manifest, in 6 weeks' time, in 3 months' time, and so on, and round it goes. So normally at Uisneach, when it's just a one-day event, I really don't get up on the site at all, because I'm preparing for the storytelling, I'm sorting out costumes, I'm getting people organised, for the procession and for their storytelling enactment. So I have to say I didn't get an awful lot of time on the site this time either, even though it was a 2-day thing. But I did get to hear Owen, is it Reardon or Pearson, doing this beautiful handcrafted stools and, talking about making the stools in the old way. That was beautiful. Sean Renane, with all the birdsong stuff, he was on after me, and that was absolutely beautiful. I mean, I love his book and watched the little documentary, and to hear him speak live was really beautiful. And my good friend Emer Burke, Chief of Obad, who did some wonderful mythological stories. And I suppose the highlight for me, and I mean, I'm brokenhearted to say I missed Eddie Lenihan, but I caught part of Emer Burke clashing with Bog Bodies, went down to Bog Bodies with the intention to leave a bit early and go back up to hear Eddie Lenihan. But I was with my lovely friend Anne from the north, and she had never heard them before. She hasn't had a lot of respite for the last while, and I just thought, no, this is actually more important. I will hear Eddie again. I've heard him before, and he's absolutely magnificent and amazing. But the joy I got, not just from being at Bug Bodies myself and dancing, but was dancing with my soul sister Anne, and her joy in experiencing them for the first time. So that was really a highlight. But I think overall, the real highlight are the conversations, the random chats, and the connections that are forged with the people who just dropped by that circle of chairs down at the campsite. And I had some, loads of laughs and silly conversations, and some really deep and profound conversations. And for all those people who came by and sat, had a cup of coffee or drank a glass of wine or sat around the fire at night and really opened, sort of shared who they really were, that is such an honor to me. It's such a trust placed in me to actually reveal yourself and to share something really real about your life. And that for me is, I think at every festival, at every gathering, it's probably the most important aspect of it. So for me, it's a huge thank you to David Clark, to Graham, to Patsy and Ro, to Annie. Lovely to see Annie with all the fire dancers, to see Michael, who I hadn't seen for years. So all these lovely people that just by kind of sitting there in a welcoming space, you get to see. And my really dear friend Trasa, who I didn't see a lot of, but I did get to dance at Bug Buddies with, so that was brilliant. So for me, it's been a really, really positive experience. I have to say, I'm definitely getting older. I was exhausted after it. By the time I took down the big bell tent and packed everything literally Tetris fashion, because I had to, otherwise it wasn't going to fit in. That was like full on. And then there were the moments of, I can't find my car keys. I know I put them in the pocket of my big leather belt, but they're not there. They're not in that pocket and they're not in that pocket. And like, I had half the place running around wondering where my keys were and have you found them? Have you found them? And did a prayer to Maeve. Now, this time of Bealtaine for me is very Eru and Maeve. Like, Maeve is all that abundance. She's that wildness. She's the sexual freedom. She's, complete absence of inhibition, or there's no shame. She's a great healer, I think, for women who are carrying shame around sexuality. But anyway, because she drives the chariot, she's warrior queen. I call on her for car stuff. So I go, oh, Maeve, and I came up with a silly little song. And, oh, Maeve, please, please help me find my keys. And so I'd done the prayer, and then I sort of stood, within minutes of doing the prayer, put my hands on my hips, and I suddenly go, what's that? Oh my God, there's a third pocket on my leather belt. And inside the third pocket, lo and behold, there are my car keys. So they weren't actually lost. I just didn't know where they were. So that was pretty cool. And Maeve Mila Buekas came up trumps. So yeah, I'm still kind of just coming back down from all of that really high intense energy. And it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful to be there with the Currasush women. It's been beautiful to march in procession together. It's been beautiful to meet people who are now friends that I did not know before the weekend. And it is beautiful to be on that sacred hill and really feel that Bealtaine energy and just be able to go, you know what, our ancestors came here and they lit a Bealtaine fire, and we're still doing that now. That's powerful, So roll on the next rodeo, and for now, I wish you all continued blessings of the abundance of this season of Bealtaine, and I wish you a slán go fóill, so just for now, and grá agus banach thí.